I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. I have been devouring this book. Okay, let's see. You're going to hold it up. I'm going to hold it up. I don't know. You can't see it. Yes. Oh, yours is upside down, which is awesome. You can't F up the podcast. There you go.
In a day.
So, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really, really excited because I first found out about you because of the article that you wrote that was forwarded to me. It clearly went viral because it was, you can't F up your kids, but the article was called Advice on Raising Kids During Coronavirus, Be the World's Okayest Mom. And of course, everybody sent it to me going, you're going to love this article. It's like right up my alley. So first of all, I do want to check in and say, this is during the coronavirus, if somebody watches this 20 years from now. So where are you located? I talk to people around the world, so people are always interested in where are you located and what's happening where you're located.
So I live in Brooklyn, a borough of New York City. So, we're in the thick of it. My kids' schools are closed. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. They're at home. The subways are pretty much closed. So we have multiple friends who have had COVID. We actually think we may have as well, because my 4-year-old had COVID toes at one point, which is one of the weirder and rarer symptoms, but a very common one in kids. So we are really in the center of the pandemic right now in America and in the world, I guess, technically.
Oh, wow. That is so frightening. Here I'm in San Francisco, near San Francisco, and we all feel super lucky. We have Gavin Newsom as our governor, and he was really quick to shut us down. So we feel pretty lucky, and I don't know anybody who's had it. So we feel really lucky. But we are definitely in the thick of having kids at home and being the short order cook and the housekeeper. And I call myself an iPad negotiator, a hostage negotiator, like most of the time, right? So, But your article was so great because it just gave some really quick points, which I really want to, share with people before we get into the book. I try to keep these podcasts short because we're all busy moms. So I like it to be, quick where they get a lot of information. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this quick because I could spend 2 hours on the timeout chapter of your book. So
interesting. I love to hear it. Everyone has a different chapter that resonates with them. So I always love to hear which one.
It's so interesting. So tell us your tips about being the world's okayest mom.
Yeah, so I had this moment in my house where it was a mess. My kids were crazy. I'd been kind of juggling work. I also have a day job in addition to promoting my book. You can't F up your kids. And I told my husband, I was like, I need a moment. Like, this is a lot. And this was kind of right at the beginning when things had been closed down. And I went upstairs to our bedroom. I shut the door. I took 10 minutes, didn't look at my phone, and just took deep breaths. And I said, this is the answer. I can't be everything to everyone. I'm going to be the world's okayest mom. And so I kind of gave myself some ground rules, if you will, that I break regularly because there's no such thing as rules right now. And so one of those is that screen time is totally fine. And the benefit of having written this book is that I have a whole chapter on screen time where I do talk about the great things, right? Kids can learn from it. They can connect with it, which is so important right now. I also said, we're going to eat carbs. First of all, also talk about food in my book. Kids' brains need carbs. Their bodies need carbs. And it's so much more important spending the time eating together than what we're feeding our kids. Not to mention, grocery shopping is kind of arduous right now. So food stress off the table. Said we were going to take time for ourselves because it's, we can't be martyrs. We can't, here we are having it all and it's a total mess, right? So I said I was going to extend grace to myself, extend grace to my husband. And there was a fourth thing that I can't quite remember.
The screens, the carbs, take a break from each other.
And my school's not a home.
My
right?
home is not a school.
So we, just like everybody else, put that real nice schedule on our wall on day one. And we were like, yes. And then reality struck. My husband and I have really demanding jobs. I also have a book to promote. We have our children. And these things are all really important to us. And of course, my kids are my first priority. But ultimately, we have to pay our mortgage. And so we just decided we're leaning into life skills. And there is so much to learn. Cooking, for example, is something that I like. And I know some parents don't. Like, I'm not a crafter, so I'm not like doing crafts with my kids.
Right.
The cooking I like. So I'm cooking with my kids. You learn math, you learn science, it's reading, it's how to follow directions. And how many people are stuck in quarantine right now being like, man, I really wish I learned how to cook as a kid.
I will tell you,
So
that's why flour is flying off the shelves, right? You can't find
yes,
any flour or yeast in the grocery stores. Everybody's like, maybe I'll try to cook.
it's unbelievable. I know, as there's a bread limit at our grocery store. You can only get 2 loaves of bread. Okay, well, I live with a lot of folks. You know, I've got 2 kids and a husband and me. And so like we're going through a loaf of bread every other day. Luckily, we were able to get a 25-pound bag of flour from Costco delivered. But, you know, I've been like baking the bread and baking the things because I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm not growing, you know, I don't have yeast sourdough starters in my house.
I haven't been able to do that either. Yeah. Yeah. But
Right.
just some white bread. Yep. I got you.
Exactly. Basic. And it's just, I think the overall message of being the world's okayest mom is parents are under an enormous amount of pressure every day, but especially now during the pandemic. And by me saying, quote unquote, okayest, it's not like I'm a bad mom. You know, I am giving myself to be like a normal, involved, and good enough parent. And in the process, I hope I'm giving other parents out there permission to do that too.
Oh, you definitely are. Thank you so much. That's why it's like viral because, you know, and I think the biggest struggle, I think we're like, what, 7 weeks in now. And we're starting to hear that, you know, we might be going back to work and are opening up in about 4 weeks. I'm like, I don't have it figured out yet, but hold on. Like I haven't found my groove. Like, and then I'm mad at myself because
Right.
really in 7 weeks, I can't figure out the groove of it, but they're always changing. You know, so
They're always changing.
I started with the list on the first day and threw that out like by noon. And then we went to like, all right, if you do some math, you do some reading, like if it's the back of the milk carton, I don't care, like just something, you know, and then it was like, okay, you can have screens at 4, but all you got to do is like some chore, something. And I think my biggest challenge is I'm not a big believer in traditional school. My kids are there, so I'm getting all the emails and I'm getting like, within the first 3 days, I had 7 different platforms and like 12 different ways to upload, you know, take pictures, upload, download, da, da, da. And I was like, I have total ADHD. My son has severe ADHD. I can't even get him on the computer to go to the classes. So I was like, you know what, we're just going to go all in on unschooling and, you know, they're just going to learn through play. And as long as we're right there with them, you know, we're going to do the best that we can. And I don't think that they're going to remember or, you know, remember that they didn't learn how to divide in this 3 months, but they are going to remember how present we were with them. You know?
I completely agree. And I think by saying present, that doesn't mean that we're sitting with them all day, every day, but the fact that, right, we're all together in our homes, we're interacting more. And you have to think, when your kids are in school, there's a ratio of like 25 or 30 kids to one teacher. Do you know how long teachers spend corralling a group of 25 students to go to the lunchroom? It's not like you drop them off at 8 a.m. and they learn straight till 3:30. I mean, like my 4-year-old, for example, his language is exploding because he's at home with us. We're talking to him. He's, you know, there's just so many benefits to this kind of unschooling thing. And I guarantee, like, I completely agree with you, Stacey. Like, there's no way we're going to look back at this time and be like, man, I really wish we'd done more math worksheets during that global pandemic.
Thank you. Hashtag no shame parenting, because I'm telling you, by the way, I want the bumper sticker. I want the t-shirt. I want the poster for my bedroom, like hashtag no shame parenting. Anybody that's on Instagram, please write hashtag no shame parenting, because you started that. And I want to hear how you started that, how it led to your book. But, you know, for this whole pandemic, homeschooling, I think that's where a lot of people are shaming themselves is,
Right.
Oh my gosh, my friend over here has her daughter in class, her, you know, 5-year-old in class till 3, you know, they have got French lessons. They're doing everything. And she has a girl and I have 2 boys and one with ADHD. So, you know, and there's so much compassion we have to have with ourselves, but stop comparing.
Yeah.
Really stop comparing.
I agree. We need to show compassion to ourselves and kindness onto others. And I think maybe you're looking at your friend who's doing 8 hours of language instruction or whatever, but like you're probably seeing it on Instagram or something.
Oh
And
yeah.
when you scroll social media, you have to constantly remind yourself that these are the highlight reels. People are so rarely posting the tantrums, the messy house, the less than perfect moments, which
Yeah.
is why I have a lot of fun on my Instagram account, No Shame Parenting, because I do show kind of like my kid freaking out, the mess, the like less than perfect moments of life. So I really feel like it's so important for us to not compare ourselves to others.
So tell me how you started with hashtag no shame parenting, because there was an epiphany in there that literally can ripple throughout the whole world.
I hope so. So I'm the former editor-in-chief of Yahoo Parenting, and I had this great team. And we noticed that no matter what we wrote about, the comments would explode on social media or just even on the story page. It was like you couldn't win, right? If you weren't breastfeeding, you were shamed. If you were breastfeeding, you were breastfeeding for too long. Like once I was breastfeeding my son in a pizza restaurant, that's how I opened my book. And like a woman walked up to me, snapped a photo, called me disgusting, and walked away. And I was like, oh, sorry, I'm not like breastfeeding on your pizza.
Right.
So
Right. And who, like, I mean, yes, keep
people
going.
have a lot of opinions about how you raise your kids. But then because of social media, we felt like nobody was having honest discussions, right? People were just posting these perfect moments. And so that led to this feeling of shame because because you can't keep up with someone's highlight reel. And you're not just comparing yourself to like your neighbor and your mom, you're comparing yourself to like your middle school frenemy, the Kardashians, like just all these people. Where you're
Right.
like,
Right.
what am I doing? But it kind of like seeps in your brain.
And by the
So
way,
my team and
they're
I,
all doing different things too. So you can't keep up with, okay, I'm going to try to be this person today, but wait, they did that. And, there's no
it's like conflicting
100%.
messages, and then the research is being tossed around, and people are just feeling like very judgmental, right? And parents are under enormous pressure because there's all these societal things, right? Like childcare is very expensive. There's a lot of backlash about two working parents, even though data shows most households are run by two working parents if they're a two-parent household. So there's like all these mismatches.
Yep.
So my team and I wanted to spark this important conversation. And because we think words, and I really strongly believe words are powerful. Words spark conversations. Conversations change culture. Culture changes policy. So we launched the No Shame Parenting movement at Yahoo Parenting, my team and I, and it went crazy viral, reached 170 million people across social media. And obviously it was an important conversation that a lot of people wanted to have. Yahoo then closed Yahoo Parenting not long after that. They closed all of these sites. And I was really bummed. I felt like, oh my gosh, like we've just started this conversation.
Yeah.
So I felt like there was unfinished business. Well, I was 8 months pregnant with my second son at that point too. So I was like, well, I've got to go have a baby. Had to have my son.
Maybe we can restart it after this, like Mahoo parenting or something. We'll just restart it.
I know. There we go. Right. I came back to Yahoo and I said, like the title of the book, You Can't F Up Your Kids, just like came to me. It was like, I was like, I want to take the research and prove that all these hot button topics, like that there's a gray area. And my book doesn't say like, you suck if you do it this way, you suck if you do it that way. It breaks down the science in a never boring way to kind of give parents permission to choose what works best for them and not what somebody says they should be doing on, social media or in their mommy group or whoever. And then I kind of talk about personal reasons too of kind of, I grew up in this weird, kind of this not great situation. And I kind of joke like, it turned out mostly okay. But, I also wanted to use that to kind of like show culturally how parenting has changed over the years to like put things in perspective as well.
It is so great. And I have to tell you, I ordered it from Amazon a couple weeks ago and I was so worried it wasn't going to come. Is it backwards? Hopefully it's not backwards.
No, you've got it. You're good.
But I literally have been devouring it. You can see like I've got it dog-eared. I've got it super highlighted. I've got notes. I mean, this chapter is literally, so I can't recommend it enough. And I just love the conversation. And I love that. I mean, and honestly, of course, I want to put a disclaimer. Of course, in the beginning, you say, yes, if you're abusive and you're a
Yeah.
horrible person. This isn't for the horrible people, right? They're not picking up this book. This is for, you know, those of us who are terrified. I would say that those people that are doing the horrible things, they're not very conscious. You know, I'm really conscious parenting. I'm a disciple of Dr. Folly Sawberry, and I do conscious parenting coaching. But I will say, I was very afraid to come out of the closet to say that I'm a conscious parenting or conscious parent and a coach, because I'm so afraid of the judgment, because people will look at me and say, well, your kid's not perfect. And it's like, just because I'm conscious doesn't mean I'm perfect. It just means that I'm questioning my choices, and I'm curious, and it's like I have a million questions, but I really want to jump in to, I mean, every chapter is so interesting, and I'm curious, like, which is the one that really lights your fire, right? Like which one really lights your fire, and then we'll talk about mine. But like, which is the one, because you talk about drinking wine when you're pregnant, C-section versus natural, you know, breastfeeding, letting your kid cry, Mary Poppins, time out, embracing technology. Like, it has all those hot topics in there. So which is the one that you get the most sort of people want to talk about the most?
So the one that people want to talk about the most with me is screen time now, but the one that I liked writing the most and that I learned the most from is definitely the food chapter, like without a doubt, because it was so enlightening. And I learned this feeding technique when I was working on the food chapter called the division of responsibility. And I'm not typically one to like follow or label the way I parent.
Yeah. But there are techniques. You can learn bits and pieces from everything. Yeah.
Exactly. And then kind of switch and change as things don't work in my family. And I'm like really open with that in the book too. I feel like now there's pressure to kind of put yourself in a camp. Like, I'm a conscious parent, I'm an attachment parent, I'm a helicopter parent. Whereas I love cry it out, but like I've also co-slept, you know, I breastfed both of my kids, but like also I think if I hadn't, it would have been totally fine. You know, like so I'm very like flexible with willing to try things that work for my family. And I'm a big believer in that. But the food chapter was so insightful because I think food is something that is so loaded in our society. And especially being a woman and growing up as a girl and like learning food is good and bad. And, you know, I have boys now too, but no matter what, like I want my kids to be like happy, healthy, adventurous eaters and to not have hangups against broccoli for their entire life or whatever food I'm forcing them to have. So the division of responsibility was like super insightful. It's essentially just like a way to serve food family style and to give your kids a little more autonomy in taking however much food they want on the table. And it ended power struggles in our house. It was incredible. My kids went from refusing to touch anything green to being adventurous, better eaters almost immediately. It made dinner so much more chill in my house. I mean, it was like just revelatory for me. Like I'm obsessed with the division of responsibility. And then just the idea of like things that I've always kind of known, but just really being able to prove it through science and talking to experts that what we eat is not as important as spending the time together and just kind of that routine in a kid's life and knowing that they have a place to come to us and talk to us, even if it's over chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese.
Right. And you know what? They don't eat macaroni and cheese forever. They will eat it every meal for 3 weeks, and then you'll stock up your freezer. And then the next day they're going to say, you know, I don't like that anymore.
Exactly.
Right? So you have to be fluid. If you're not fluid, you're just going to bump up against the rocks, you know?
Yeah, and if your kid is requesting macaroni and cheese every day, so there is science that says kids need more carbs when they're going through growth spurts. Like their bodies are going to naturally want them more. So maybe the reason they requested it every day for 3 weeks is because they're going through a growth spurt and then they're done.
Yeah.
And the less, you know, and basically the overarching theme of my book is moderation. Everything in moderation. So I'm not like I'm not saying feed your kid all macaroni and cheese the rest of their lives, but like I don't have a lot of food hang-ups in my house.
That's really important to me too. And, you know, and the thing that I'm trying to do, mine are 5 and 8. And the thing that I am always thinking about is what do I want to teach them? What do I want to teach the 15-year-old? You know what I mean? Like, so if I'm telling him you can't have sugar, you can't have sugar, what I really am trying to teach them is your body doesn't want sugar. Like, check in with your body. And if he says, no, my body really wants sugar, okay, well, let's see how you feel, you know? And then I'm also teaching him to read labels, right? I don't know how many grams of sugar are in that, you know, bottle. 58 grams of sugar in that lemonade. Okay, well, you know, regularly we're supposed to, you know, they say science is 25 grams of sugar. So let's read it. Let's just be aware of what's happening to your body. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the sugar buildup is later in life. So it's not like, okay, if you eat too much, it's not now. But I really am like, you know, your body doesn't want you to have that, instead of my mom doesn't want me to have that.
Yeah, I think it's important to connect food to how it makes your body feel. It kind of takes away that, like, I'm being bad by eating cake, or, you know, and you don't realize until it's like, until you make yourself conscious of it, how loaded we speak about food in our culture. You know, like, cake is not bad or good. It's just like something delicious that we have during fun birthday parties. So, you know, my kid will say something like, my 6-year-old will be like, you know, it's really bad to have too much candy. And I'll be like, well, it's okay to have a little candy, but if we ate too much, we'd have a stomachache.
Exactly.
So I don't want to deprive my kids of things and feel like every time they have the opportunity to have it, they're going to like go nuts on it. My ultimate goal with food is to connect, as you said, like the body to the feeling to what they're eating, so that they can make smart choices. Because that's my goal in life, right? Is to like give my kids the tools to become the best version of themselves and to like thrive in the world. And taking care of your body with food is one of those tools.
Yeah, I did used to think, actually, and I never did this, but I always thought I should have, is they don't drink soda, but they talk about it. And you know, I just don't have it in the house, and we're not places where it is. But, you know, if they ever wanted a Coke, what I might do is like put hot sauce in it. And so then they'll drink it and be like, oh, I hate the taste of that. And then I'll be like, oh gosh, that's so crazy. I don't know why I hate it. So then
we don't keep it in our house either. Not that I have anything against it.
Right,
When we go out to eat, I'll like order a Coke, you know, and not let my kids taste it. My 4-year-old loves it. My 6-year-old thinks it's disgusting. And I'm like, all right, there you go. Like,
right.
Moving on.
If my son could have lemonade, you know, 10 times a day, he would. So, okay, I have to get to this chapter. Speaking of good and bad, the chapter about time out. And so, I mean, literally I've taken notes, I've highlighted, and I love that you did the research, or you talked to Dr. Kadzin at
Dr. Alan Kasdan
at the Yale Parenting Center. And of course he, you know, I'm finding, you know, the more research you do about parenting, finding a lot more doctors and writers and experts or people that I really gel with who are talking way more about prevention, and being proactive rather than reactive. One of my favorite books is called The Explosive Child. It's not like, don't let the title freak you out, but it's so much, it could be for an explosive child or a typically developing child, but it's so good because it's so proactive. And so what was sort of the highlight of what you learned about timeouts or discipline, which
well, so I was dreading writing the discipline chapter, and I admit that in my book, because how was I supposed to say spanking is okay when I don't really believe that? You know, I was on Good Morning America talking about parenting stories once, and I kind of like got a little sloppy talking about spanking, and like I got spanked on Twitter, essentially, right? Like everybody was like so mad at me, and I was like, oh, I just didn't say it right, you know. But you know, I do say, right, in an otherwise normal childhood, the occasional spanking is not going to ruin a kid's life, but the goal of that chapter is to make it so parents never need to resort to that. And after I spoke to all the experts, I stepped back and saw that discipline isn't about the timeouts or the counting to 3 or the threats. It is about emphasizing the traits that you want your child to have, modeling those, and giving a lot of positive reinforcement, and giving a lot less attention and reinforcement to the negative traits. Because, you know, as parents, we can kind of go down that rabbit hole. I mean, if a kid's screaming, you're going to give them more attention. Well, but like, are we giving our kids attention when they're being honest or kind? So my discipline approach then switched to more of a, oh, Everett, it's my 6-year-old, Everett, I'm so proud of you for sharing your toys with your little brother. Or that was really amazing of you to let your brother take a turn picking the TV show. So I try to give my kids a lot of attention when they do something right. So they're less compelled to do something
and it
to act
works.
out.
And
it works. It's incredible how it works.
I mean, if you just look at how much energy and focus we give to create a timeout, and I will be honest, I've never given my kids a timeout, and I will tell you, it is not because they're perfect. It is not because I'm perfect. It is only because those misbehaviors I only see as communication. Like, and I see it is the difference between naughty and not knowing. I don't see them as naughty. I see them as not knowing. And trust me, literally, as I was preparing for this, I heard my husband go, "What are you guys doing?" The 8 and 5-year-old boys. And they're like, "We're cleaning up. Don't worry. We're cleaning it all up." And I was like, "Oh, right. I've got 5 minutes. What are they cleaning up?" And I go out there and my husband is looking at all these towels in the hallway. I'm looking at a flood of water. And he's like, "Do you know what?" And I'm like, "Don't stop. And I said, "I am so impressed that you're cleaning." I didn't even know what it was yet. "I'm so impressed that you're cleaning this up. Whatever it is, that's the thing I always want to teach you. You can make a mistake, but you're cleaning it up. Thank you so much." And I really appreciate it. And he's like, he's the one that does the laundry. So he's like, "That's 15 more towels." And I'm like, it's not about the laundry. It's not about the laundry. What we want to teach them in this moment is, if you make a mistake, you take responsibility for it. It doesn't matter. The floors aren't going to get ruined. The bathroom's not going to get whatever. And it was literally running into other rooms. And then I noticed, by the way, that what it was is they'd blown up these huge water balloons. Yesterday they did these, and they're this big. And yesterday they were trying to carry them around. And I was like, "Don't carry it in the house. Please, I don't want it in the house." And so when it exploded, of course, I wanted to say to my son, "Remember what I said yesterday about those balloons popping in the house and what was going to happen?" But I didn't. I said, after he cleaned it up, I was like, "Hey, do you remember yesterday when I was talking about that they might pop?" And he was like, "Yeah, now I totally get it." And I said, "So you probably won't carry them again?" He's like, "No, but I will clean it up again if it happens."
Oh, gosh.
And I was like, little baby steps. So anyway, those moments, again, you can look at it as naughty and be mad and give them a timeout, but now they've learned nothing, So,
right.
And so
I'm not totally opposed to timeouts, though.
Yeah,
I will say,
right.
I do give them to my kids. I really think that the point of discipline and the point of most parenting is kind of looking at your kid and seeing what's going to work with them, which is why these like overarching parenting philosophies don't work, because like
100%.
you need to kind of be in tune with your own kid. And
100%.
my 4-year-old is like kind of like sticks you, he gets you. So he will ignore me, provoke me. And I have done timeouts because it works really well for him. But what I say in the book, and what the, Dr. Alan Kasdan of the Yale Parenting Center has said, is you cannot do a timeout if you don't do a time in. And the time in is exactly as you've explained, kind of reinforcing the positive behaviors, or else it's just not going to work. It doesn't connect to their action. And what's the point of a punishment that doesn't connect to their action?
Exactly. And so, the consequences, as long as they're natural, and, it's interesting too. And I don't believe in consequences that are like really far out. Like, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your iPad for a month. Like at 5 and 8, they don't even know what the end of the day, like they can only look at like this hour barely, you know what I mean? And so,
Totally.
And something I learned from Dr. Shafali, which I thought is so good, are sand boundaries and stone boundaries. Like, what are the ones that, I need to know what my stone boundaries are. Like, whatever like, there's no hitting and no breaking things, right? Like, that's a stone boundary. When you start moving into a situation where something might get broken or somebody might get hurt, now we need to separate ourselves. So, there are definitely times. So anyway,
that's so wise. The stone and sand boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, and because the other thing is, sometimes they need that negotiation. Now, I love, there's one you talk in here the problem with negotiating with a terrorist or, I mean, your toddler. So, I thought that was a really great place too, because you have to also understand the neurological development of a child and where they are hitting, biting, where are they on that spectrum, and, how much of it is natural and how much of it is, them misbehaving.
Yeah, absolutely. And like not overloading your kid with being like, oh, okay, you're upset. Okay, let me give you a cookie. Let's put your shoes on. Let's put the green sweater on. Let's like, whoa, like that's a lot when you're upset. And the chapter, the part of that chapter that I also liked was the fact that bribery is okay, and why I believe in bribery, and because there's a right and a wrong way to bribe.
Let's talk about that.
The wrong way to bribe your kid is when they are melting down in the dressing room of Old Navy, and you're like, oh, I'll give you ice cream, because then they connect the meltdown to the ice cream.
Yeah.
The right way to bribe is, hey, honey, I need you, to your kid, hey, kiddo, I need to run errands and you need to come with me. And if you run the errands with me, we're going to go out for ice cream together at the end. Yeah. So that you have set up the ground rules before the situation escalates. And then when that kid is freaking out at Old Navy, you could remind, like, hey, remember, we set the ground rules about the ice cream and you're not going to get it. And so then it like connects more with following the rules
and the positive behavior. And it's like, it's more, sometimes I liken it to getting your paycheck, right? There's some things we don't like to do when we get our paycheck, and yet that's sort of what we're teaching them. Is there's some things, but there is a reward at the end of it, and there will be pieces of it that you enjoy, and we'll do our best to make it enjoyable. But I think bribery. I'm in the camp that sometimes lying isn't so bad. So if I sneak a little, medicine or cough syrup or something in their juice, and he's like, did you put something in there? No, I didn't. It's just a new juice. and I'm only because I don't want to make a battle over medicine, or something, or I'm not a big fan of hiding vegetables, but I mean, I do a lot of juicing, and and in the beginning I would put green in there. Sometimes they'd be okay with it, sometimes they wouldn't. And then when they wouldn't, I just put it in a glass that they couldn't see through. But then it got to the point where, you drank that so many times, you don't mind spinach. And now my son will ask for spinach in his juice. Yeah. So I'm okay with lying little tiny white lies. Like,
I think you have to do what works for your family. I just think like different kids, like, your kids' personalities, and I think going back to the food, that was like an important thing to connect. The idea that a kid that's more adventurous in life is probably going to be more adventurous with food. And a kid that's a little more cautious in life may not want to try the spinach. So I think it's always like, you are the best expert on your kids. And that's why the whole point of this book is to reconnect with your belief on the best way to raise kids. And I'm not saying that means like all the craziness and the abuse and the neglect and like all the terrible things. No, it's your instincts with the best intentions, and partner with a trusted medical provider, if that makes you feel more comfortable, who knows you, knows your children, knows your family. The ultimate takeaway from speaking to all these experts, between screen time and discipline and feeding, is that our kids are, is that there are so many shades of gray when it comes to all the quote unquote rules. There are very few situations in life, and especially in parenting, that are black and white, and that we shouldn't be afraid to lean into those shades of gray to do what works for our family.
It's so beautifully said. And I think as long as you know what your North Star is, and as long as you know, look, what I'm trying to teach them, what are the values? And I think you even write that in there, like, know what it is that you're trying to create, who you're trying to create. Honesty. If you want an honest child, you need to model honesty. You want a healthy child, model, being healthy and eating healthy. You want a child that's not aggressive, you need to model not being aggressive.
Right. our job as parents is not to shape our children into who we want them to be, but it's to give them the tools and support to develop into the best version of themselves. And I do think it's really important to, as you said, identify those traits and then model those traits and help reinforce the development of them in our children. We can't make our kids into someone they're not, but our job is to just give them the tools.
We have so much ego around who our children are and who they're becoming. And I think we do a lot of labeling of they're good if they're listening, they're compliant, they're quiet, but your child may not always be that way. So loving them unconditionally in every situation. My child, who has pretty extreme ADHD, has really, really intense meltdowns. And my job is to tell him, I love you even when you're tearing apart a room and when because that, and I know people will not understand if you don't have this child, he cannot control that. And my job is to help him get through it as gracefully and as supported as you can, try to learn new techniques in between, not in that moment, and to just say, he's perfect exactly as he is. And my job is to help him learn the tools to have a really successful, healthy life with confidence, and feeling good about himself.
Well, an expert I spoke to in my book too said something that has really stuck with me, which is happy children are not always happy. I think there's a lot of pressure.
I highlighted that line. It was so good.
I love that line too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure, I think, on us to be our kids' best friends, and that discipline is bad and that we shouldn't draw the line because we got to be the cool mom. And that's not true. I think that we do need to set parameters for our kids. That gives them a sense of, what to expect and safety and stability. And those are really important things for our children. And so I do think it's helping our kids be the best version of themselves and laying down the law to a point that makes sense. That's also preparing them for adulthood. They're going to get to the workplace and there's going to be rules. And we want our kids to be functioning members of society.
Yeah. It's so good. I'm telling you, I could talk to you for 2 hours but I do try to promise I get it in. Okay. I don't really always get it into 30 minutes. It might go over a little bit because I know we're all so busy. And it's funny, even, we were so busy before the pandemic, before we got shut in. And now I'm still so busy. I liken it to having a newborn. Like when you couldn't shower for 3 days and you had a newborn and you're like, how's that possible? They sleep all the time. And yet now it's like, where are the hours going? And I realize, they're going with my children, which is amazing. And yet I'm still carving out time to do this, which is what I love. And I have such a passion for sharing information. But I'm so, so grateful for you taking the time. I'm going to hold this up one more time, you guys. You can't F up your kids. Have some compassion. Go buy it. And also, I really highly recommend Googling her article because it was so good. It's a really nice quick tip, which is advice on raising kids during the coronavirus. Be the world's okayest mom. We are all doing our best. Really keep the North Star of loving your kids and seeing them as perfect and giving them tools to grow up. And Lindsay, I just wish you so much luck on this. I'm guessing you would have been on a book tour at this time.
Yes. Well, I'm doing a lot of virtual events. So I've been doing a ton of radio events and Zoom events. And so it's kind of a weird time to release a book. But, and again, I kind of say I didn't plan this book for a pandemic, but all the guidance in it is still more, relevant than ever. So there's still a ton of tools that are completely, that like I said, they are so helpful during this really surreal moment in time. And the article you'd mentioned, Stacey, about being the world's okayest mom, I link it to my bio on my Instagram, No Shame Parenting. So it's available there.
Thank you. And everybody, if you tuned in late, hashtag and at No Shame Parenting. I'm not kidding, Lindsay. I think it's time for bumper stickers. I think I'm the proud parent. You know what? I think we need the bumper sticker. I am a proud child of a hashtag No Shame Parenting mom.
I love that. I am all for that.
Right?
I think it's time. We need to reclaim the sanity of parenthood right now. And I hope this book opens up that discussion.
Yeah, yeah. So everybody, don't be so hard on yourselves. Don't judge yourself against anybody, not against me or Lindsay or anybody else. You do you, and just take good care of each other. Be safe, be healthy, and enjoy this time. Lindsay, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate
Stacey,
it.
thank you.
Now it takes me
So
like,
happy.
yeah, it was so fun. Now it takes me like 5 minutes to end all of my different things. So hold on, I'm going to say goodbye on my Instagram. Didn't end up on Facebook Live, but I'll put it on later. And then I will share this with you. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody on Instagram. Thank you, guys. And thank you again. It's awesome. Thank you. I had so much fun with you.
Thank you, Stacey. Same. I really appreciate you having me on. So great to talk to you.
Tons of fun. I'm sure that we will talk again. Have a great day. Be safe.
Thank you. You too. Good luck.
Thanks.